I've been on the hunt to find the perfect brush. The brush that will help me paint like the modern masters of digital art. The brush to rule them all. And in my search, I downloaded so many brushes and my collection keeps growing over the years. Let me show you what I found. Most of these artists have their own brushes. They each have about a dozen brushes in their brush packs, some more, some less. They all look different, and I was hoping I can find that one unique custom brush that they all share and have to make their magic happen. But that wasn't the case. So I thought they probably use a combination of all their brushes all the time to achieve their style and their look. But that wasn't enough. I needed to find out more. So I started looking into their process. I started studying artists that I really like and admire. I started studying Wolof, Guis, Sam Does Art, Ross Draws, Louish, and many more artists, and I was really surprised by what I found. But after studying these artists for many hours and trying to replicate their style, I noticed that almost all of them just use two brushes for 90% of their work. The brushes have small variations, but they are almost similar to each other. And those two brushes were the two brushes that I ignored the most when I was trying to find the magic brush. So what are these two brushes and how do they use them? Well, they are simply the hard round brush and the soft airbrush. They all have some version of these two brushes, and I noticed that they are generally very similar and almost the same as the default ones. And you might think, but that can't be true, they all have their custom brushes. And we will get to that later. But the concept that they use when painting is edge control. Do I want to have a hard edge or a soft edge? Do I want my brush strokes to be left in there, or do I want to have a smooth look? So let's take a look at a few examples of what I mean by this. If we look at Sam Does Art, for example, we can see two different styles almost. I think I can summarize them as the quick hard edge style and then the fully rendered style. In the quick one, it is mostly the hard round brush, and in the fully rendered one, it is a mix or a combination of two. But Sam's brush strokes and edges are kind of left in there, and when we look at it, we can see that he almost uses the hard round brush a lot. So I learned from him to utilize and use the hard round brush, and that I shouldn't be afraid from leaving those hard edges in my paintings. And the more I look into his process, the more I notice that he uses the hard round brush quite a bit, and then maybe at the end uses a lot of his other custom brushes. But 90% of his work is done using those two round brushes. Another example of an art style that keeps using a lot of hard round brush and leaves the brush strokes in there is the Marvel Rivals. You can see all the hard edges in here. You can see that the hard edges and the round brush probably used quite a bit in this style as well. Now, how about the soft airbrush? Some artists I know are afraid of using the soft airbrush and try to avoid it as much as possible. The thing that they are worried about is that it can give the airbrush look to your painting and that it could look very bad and very artificial. But if we look at Wolof, for example, he uses the airbrush a lot when rendering faces. I watch a lot of his time-lapse videos and he just uses two brushes for the most part. The idea is to think about the hard edges and the soft edges constantly. And he switches between the two brushes all the time. If I want a soft transition, then I would switch to the soft airbrush and then just blend that way. And if I want a hard edge, like rendering the eyebrows, for example, the eyelashes or other things that are hard edges, then I switch to the hard round brush. So let's take a look at an example of how would that look like when I'm painting. So this is a recent painting that I have done. And if we look at it, we can see that there are places that the edges are pretty soft. For example, we can see areas in the face here where the transition is really rendered or the transition is really soft. So I use the soft round brush when I'm trying to paint to make that transition soft, and we don't have those hard edges. Alternatively, there are some areas, for example, over here, where there is a really hard edge. And I use the hard round brush to make sure when I am painting, the hard edge is clearly defined. So it's a play between hard edges and soft edges. And of course, you need to decide and you need to determine how you want to paint and where you want your soft edges and hard edges to be. And there's a lot to do with learning the fundamentals and learning how things work in order to know where some of these hard edges need to be. Well, you may ask, so why do they have all these custom brushes? Well, the idea is that these custom brushes, each one of them has a specific purpose, and they are really used towards the end. For example, they may have a specific brush for highlights or a specific brush to add a specific pattern to the final painting. And all these artists usually use these custom brushes towards the end. So as you can see, the more research I did and the more I looked into how these artists paint, the more I realized that I had been wasting my time trying to find that magical brush that will make me a great artist. This is good news and bad news at the same time. It's good news because it means there is no magic brush. It means that we can all master digital art and there is no hidden secret. The bad news is that we really need to work hard and practice in order to master how to use these brushes and how to actually paint and render. There is no magic formula, and it is all about edge control and taking our time in rendering. Of course, there is more to their style than just brush strokes and edge control, but at least I can tell you that the brushes you have are enough to paint anything like the artist you love. And if you want to learn more about how to find your art style, you can watch this video next.